Hello on another Tuesday. Welcome to another Tuesday Tea-ology. Missed last week. I was away on a little retreat, and that was good. And you got a vacation from me, so everybody's happy. But we're back, and with tea and theology, the full ensemble. And today is the day I've been dreading. For today's tea is number 212, Marrakech Mint. And mint is not appealing to me. I am nervous about this one, but I've been going through them in order, because I am committed to discovering the entire Wittard of Chelsea Tea Discovery Collection for your sake, for you, my beloved viewers, for both of you. Well, we have the Marrakech Mint, which is flavored green tea with peppermint leaves, the traditional taste of the Marrakech Medina. Now, just to give you the context there, Marrakech, if you didn't know, is a city in Morocco. Morocco is a country on the northwest corner of the continent of Africa. And Marrakech is a large city, over 900,000 people. And the Marrakech Medina is the old, traditional, walled first settlement around which the rest of Marrakech grew. So that's what they're alluding to here. This is the traditional taste, they say, of the Marrakech Medina. That doesn't change the fact that it's mint. Well, Tuesday Tea-ology is all about courage. You make a mint tea, you get a mint tea. That's really all I can say. And blessings to the people of Marrakech, and to each his own. I am not yet convinced of the mint tea, but that's all right. We still have the theology to go to, and there is something wonderful, even when Marrakech Mint is as expected. Mm. We have been talking about the doctrine of creation. And in the doctrine of creation, we have come to the doctrine of man, the doctrine of mankind. And this is within the doctrine of creation. We're placing our anthropology within our cosmology. Big words, but what we mean to say is we are putting mankind in our proper place within this doctrine of creation, keeping always in mind that fundamental distinction which is essential to good and true theology, that we are not God, that there is God and everything not God, and we're in the not God category, that God is the creator and Lord of all, that God is the center of the universe, and we must discover our right relationship with Him. And that actually is where our fullness lies. When we try to make ourselves God, then we end up chasing our tail in futility. But it is rightly relating to God as God and understanding ourselves as creatures and coming to a right relationship with Him that we then find our purpose, our meaning, and our fullness. And so understanding ourselves is a piece of this, and it's within the doctrine of creation. God created a good world. God, the triune creator, who has unity and distinction in His very nature, created a world of many things, and yet the oneness of the cosmos, and all made by Him, showing His wisdom, displaying His power and His knowledge and His beauty and glory in the beauty that He has put in the world. And the high point of God's creation is mankind. That we are not God, we are creatures, but we are wonderfully blessed creatures. And that's kind of where we've come to. This divine deliberation, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. The image of God, and the theological term, it's often put in the Latin, the imago Dei. And it's good to know the theological terms because they can come to carry a lot of connotations. And as you get into the study, get into the conversation, then it makes a very useful shorthand way of communicating a lot when you know the proper terminology. That's true in theology as it is in other areas of study. So the imago Dei, the image of God. What is this image of God? It clearly separates mankind from the rest of creation. It clearly brings a dignity and a sort of glory, which on the one hand puts us above the rest of creation, but on the other hand makes our sin as terrible as it is. You know, when a creature can do things that we say this is bad, you know, a predator comes and eats some innocent creature or something, but at the same time, it's just an animal. Its actions, even when those actions are, we would say, an evil in the world, its actions don't have the same kind of moral weight on it as ours do on us. As creatures made in God's image, we have a profound moral responsibility. And yet also, this is the preparation for the work of redemption. We'll come back to that. But first, we have to just try to ask, what is this image of God all about? Verse 27 of Genesis chapter 1 says, So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. So after God has said, let us make man in our image and likeness, and again, I take that to be a synonymous parallelism. That is two ways of saying the same thing. It's not that the image of God is one thing and the likeness another, but that's two ways of saying the same thing, a poetic kind of repetition. And then it goes on to say, God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. And so it's twice repeated, this matter being created in the image of God in verse 27, and it's put in the deliberation before in verse 26. Clearly is a central concept to the nature of humanity. But what is it? What is the image of God? There are three main lines of interpretation. The traditional line of interpretation, we might call it, here's another big term, and this one is philosophical, ontological. You don't need to remember that. Try to grasp the concept. What we're saying is being made in the image of God is something about the very nature of a human being. It is about what you are rather than what you do. The other two interpretations focus on what you do. This one says, no, it's what you are. That you are a different creature, and so this would be attached to the soul, that that the eternal, immaterial aspect of the human being, and it might also be attached to what scientifically we call being sentient, being self-aware. That is a difference between us and all other creatures, and so this personality, self-awareness, having an immaterial aspect to the being is what it is to be made in the image of God. It is like God, an echo of God. There's one aspect. And you could also include in there, everything that goes attached to that moral responsibility and reality, like we've talked about, this dignity and this higher place and so on. The other two interpretations focus on what you do. One of them is called the functional interpretation of the image of God. And that may observe that it says, let us make man in our image and our likeness. This is Genesis 1:26. And let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and over the livestock and over all the earth and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So clearly the image of God is tied into having a role that echoes God's role. God, as the creator, is the ruler of all things, and he created man in his image and gave us dominion over the world that he created. And so we exercise a role that echoes God's role relative to creation, the functional interpretation. And the third is the relational understanding of the image of God. And that may point out and draw attention to how in verse 27, when it says, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him, this male and female he created them. And when it goes on, especially in Genesis chapter 2, this male-female relationship is sort of the fundamental, central human relationship that God designed. Not that everybody has a marriage relationship, not that God means for everyone to have one, but generally speaking, that is the basic human relationship. Your life is not incomplete if that's not a relationship you have. That's not what it's saying. But this design for humanity is a relational design. Some people, God gives them a calling to celibacy, to never marry and have that life partner, but nonetheless, we are meant to have relationships of a multitude of kinds. And so there is a sense in which this male-female relationship referenced in Genesis 1 to 2 draws attention in a broader level to all of our human relationships, to the fact that we are profoundly relational creatures, and we can relate on a much deeper way than the other living creatures can. I have a little dog, and I love her. She's my teddy bear, and she likes being around me. She looks to me for comfort. When there's a thunderstorm outside, she comes and hangs out with us. She likes to be in the same room with us. There is a relational aspect, but her relationships occur at a much lower level. There's a lot of instinct going on here. I'm not an expert in animals, and these may be some questions that the experts divide over how it is. But nonetheless, it's certainly true that her relationships are on a much lower instinctive kind of level. There is a higher relationality in the nature of the human person. And I'm inclined to say, and I think this is probably a fairly common view, that we could debate these. Is it what we are? Is it our function? Is it our relationship? What's the image of God? But that these are all part of one mix. I think is the ultimate answer to come to. The image of God is indeed what we are, and so even some, when we're sleeping, we're not relating to anyone, we're not doing anything, we're still in the image of God. A comatose person, someone who has entered a persistent vegetative state and is no longer capable of relationships or of functioning in the world, taking this role of, in various aspects, exercising dominion over the world. They are still a person made in the image of God and possessed of all of the dignity of being a human being made in God's image. So I don't think we can ever lose the ontological aspect, the aspect that being made in the image of God is what we are, not just what we do. But I think it's fair to say that what we are, made in the image of God, normally plays out significantly and is expressed in our labor that God has called us to in His good world, our relationships with one another. These are the ways in which being in the image of God then is lived out. And so I think we hold on to all three. And we see that there is a complete picture, and there may be more that we can add to it, but not today, because we've had a good Tuesday Tea-ology together, and you have other things to do. But one more postscript to add. Time isn't here for me to really go into it. But remember that this, as I said, is a part of God's plan of redemption. God is eternal. God knows the end from the beginning. Even here in creation, God knew that mankind would fall into sin, and God knew the path of redemption that He was going to take. And we see that God made creatures in His own image and likeness, and to redeem them, that God sent his own Son to become a man. And you see the foresight of God, the planning of God, that he had made these creatures in his image. And so when the Son became a man, there was sort of a foundation laid there already. Not that we're God, we're on the creature side, but that we're made in the image of God. And so there is a fittingness that God, in whose image we are made, would then uh, come and take upon himself humanity, that Jesus Christ, who the New Testament tells us in Colossians, is the image of the invisible God. He is the true, fullest realization of this, the image of God, for he is God himself become man. And he has come to redeem us so that we can once again turn to properly living out and reflecting the image of God into which we were made. But something more that hopefully we'll get into next week. In the meantime, the Lord bless you and care for you and give you grace and strength in every day.